for Doge Pound as a brand, like the IP, like I said, it's easy to imagine like the path of where we have to go to keep advancing it. But for the brand itself and the business, I almost want it to be more or less like a perk. Like let's get Doge Pound to be a real business and make revenue and be sustainable. I mean, that's a big part of it right now, and reach a bigger community. I think we got fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, and then we had some really big influencers that loved the project, that chilled it a lot. We were fortunate in that regard too. We never actually paid. People like Becker was probably our biggest proponent to some of these early bull runs. We never paid Becker. I don't know. It's kind of a crazy ride. It's been I think a little over. I think yesterday was officially a year and a half since the first mint or so. Maybe a year and 10 months or so that we officially started working on it.
The next thing that I kind of want to go into here is you guys dropped the initial collection and then you dropped the Hound Puppies, which I love the name for. So with these Pound Puppies versus kind of the original here, what was the difference between the two? Was it just kind of like a play on, hey, we want to have something that's kind of a little bit of a different style?
Like back then, NFTs, it was essentially you made your project, and then like the next big source of utility back in the day was like everyone was doing some sort of companion NFT. So, I think we were just following the playbook back then for what a successful NFT quote unquote looked like. And we launched the companions, the puppies. But really back in the day, that was really the only basis of it. Like, let's launch our NFT. Let's get the Doge Pound done. Let's make the companion NFT. That was just a playbook for NFTs back then.
And then now you guys are really trying to push the narrative, or I would maybe not push the narrative, but you're wanting to be kind of the dog brand of Web3. And I don't know if you remember, Slumdog Millionaire was another collection that came out way back when. And I remember at the time, people were like, yo, do we get into Doge Pound? Do we get into Slum? And it was almost the same with Alien Boy and... oh, which alien do we get in Alien Boy Summer? So how was that when you guys kind of... did you view it as like competition, or how did that fare out?
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. Back then we were working on the Doge Pound artwork. And then I think even right before then too, Bored Ape Yacht Club came out with the Bored Ape Yacht Kennel Club. And we're like, oh crap, like that's going to kill us. Like, cause there was no dog projects at the time, or like none that I really knew of. And then, then Slumdog just came out as well. And we, for a second, I mean, how it is. We're like, oh crap, like, did they see our artwork? Are they copying us? I did talk to those guys that were actually really nice people too. But yeah, definitely at the time, because we were getting ready to launch, in the coming weeks then, that was definitely a little bit concerning. I do remember that project very well.
It's funny how it's all kind of worked out throughout the time of what ones have really lasted. And it's cool to see what you guys have done. And one thing that I want to jump into here is the Doge Pound shelter. So did you guys take mint money for this? Was it something with royalties? How did this all come about?
So we give some royalties now back to the shelter, but like when we started the Doge Pound, it was never like, we kind of knew that we would donate some sort of our money to some sort of cause. We didn't necessarily think, like back then we never thought we'd actually make a dog shelter. It just happened to be, we met someone through our community who introduced us to a guy that had another dog shelter in Tanzania. So the dog shelters in Tanzania. Had really good conversations with him. Like, funny enough, his real name's actually John, so my real name's Kyle. Had really good conversations with John, and we decided, like, okay, maybe instead of just handing off our money to some sort of dog shelter, maybe we can make it something a little bit more interactive and fun for the brand. So literally built a dog shelter from the ground up, from scratch. Bought land in Tanzania with the charity. Developed the land, started building the buildings there, getting staff, and then rescuing dogs. So it's kind of come full circle. It's pretty cool. And I think long term it'll be a really fun part of our brand. A lot of people now, that's still one of the biggest reasons why they love the Doge Pound at times is the Doge Pound shelter. But I think we'll even be able to grow it even more, hopefully, as time goes on.
With your vision of wanting to be kind of the top dog brand, with obviously every collection kind of doing different routes, we also know that you guys are looking at the gaming avenue as well. So can you give us just like an overview of what you guys are wanting to achieve and why people should be paying attention to what you're doing?
A big thing for us in 2023, a lot of my time and focus now goes on what's going to be our web. I kind of call it like a web 2.5 approach. How can we take Doge Pound and actually expand it into a bigger community. I think it's naive to think that NFTs are gonna, for them to really reach mainstream adoption. I think we have to figure out ways that we can do that, right? How can we appeal to just someone that loves dogs? Like, how does Doge Pound fit in with that? We had something that was an eye opener for me is we had an IRL event in Los Angeles in December, and it was the perfect sort of event for Doge Pound. It was a dog and an art event in one, and pretty much everybody came with their dog. So hundreds of people came with their dog. It was a perfect kind of consumer for Doge Pound. But, as you can imagine, like nobody there, I would say like 99% of the people, like nobody knew what like even a digital collectible was or digital art or, much less an NFT. And we did like an activation there together with the brands there, but it was really hard for people to understand. So a big focus now is like, how do we do that? How do we get Doge Pound to really, we've been working on this for a while, but more aggressively, how do we get Doge Pound to in the hands of people that just love dogs? And how do we make that journey for them really easy to digest? Yeah, there you go. That's it, Schiller. So that's a big focus for us now. How do we, if we truly say we're going to be the dog brand of Web3, like how do we actually start to put that into action? How do we start working with some of these dog brands, these dog influencers, people that just love dogs, even if it's in a smaller capacity to start? Like I think an example of this would be like if we rolled a program where anyone can mint a dog. Maybe they're making a dog that looks like their in real life dog. And then maybe to start the value proposition for them is literally just they just get discounts and perks on dog related stuff. And then slowly that could transition into something maybe along the lines of something like Tamagotchi and making a bigger experience out of it. But we don't want to make that first entry really, really easy to consume for people. Otherwise, it just won't work.
Yeah, I think that is interesting when we have the conversation around like how do you kind of branch out to a world where, as you said at this event, most people didn't even know what the hell a digital collectible is, but at the same time, they could really be attached to something that's of a dog, of something, or in general, anything that they like, and expanding on that. So for this event, what was something that you learned that you didn't know before?
I think just that basis, like I kind of knew that most people, like this was my first in real life experience, like trying to explain like the Doge Pound to just the regular consumer, like, this is why you should maybe care about it. And it was an eye opener in that sense. I mean, you kind of know in the back of your head, like, right, when me and you go and like tell our family and friends, like, oh, like I work in NFTs, it's still like kind of this really like taboo topic and hard for a lot of people to understand, or doesn't make any sense. But even more of an eye opener in that sense, like we have to, again, like make our strategy really, really easy to digest by the average person. So that's a big goal for us this year we set the goal to have over 100,000 users in the Doge Pound ecosystem by the end of the year. I think we can definitely do it, especially with some of the brands that we're in touch with. But I think it's exciting. It's a very, for some NFT brands, their IP, I think it's hard for them. Like, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for them to figure out like what is our IP and what's the transition to being a bigger community. With Doge Pound being dog IP, I think we have a big advantage there. So it'll be fun. I'm sure we'll make some mistakes along the way, but I think it'll be really fun to try.
Well, so you guys have kind of dove into several different aspects, from, the original collection to the companion collection to having launchpad projects. Like, are you still looking at being a launchpad, or was that kind of a one and done?
Yeah, I think we want to get away from that a little bit now. It was fun. That was like a big value proposition for people for a while as we were, launching a lot of projects for people, but it kind of, all the value got extracted. Then it's like, like if you want to take like Journey Club, for example, that made a lot of people in Doge Pound a ton of money, and it was great for Doge Pound. But then what happens after that, right? So I think maybe to backtrack there a little bit too, I just don't want to neglect the brand or the IP too much anymore. And I
For
think
sure.
where we're going now is just much more focused. And the IP itself, like the Genesis collection, the Puppies, to me, that's more the easy part now. So we've teamed up with AMDI Studios, which is a project that makes My Pet Hooligan. We work with them very closely. They're working on all of our 3D work. I talk to them, every single week. Really good friends of mine. We're in a good position there. Getting the IP like, again, that's very straightforward. Take the IP, try and get into, maybe we try and do something like an animation series, make more content, get it into retail, do all those things. That's pretty straightforward. But again, I think the bigger picture is how we can appeal to a much bigger audience. And then it lends way to a lot of good things for the brand.
Well, you were talking about 3D there for a second, and from my understanding, you guys are coming out with like 3D models of the NFT. So, is the purpose of that kind of just, hey, like this is a cool 3D thing, or are you trying to partner with like any metaverse, or is there anything more to that?
Well, to start, it'll be taking the 2D assets, making them into full-on 3D characters. We'll be able to do a lot of cool things. Like you can actually do it with some of them. It's all kind of, a lot of this is headed by AMGI Studios, so you can take your 3D character and you can make user-generated content with them. If you want to, it hasn't officially been released, but in the near future, if you want to do like this Schiller, if you want to talk as your Doge, you'd be able to do that. So I think we want to progress the Genesis collection enough where if like that's your true identity in this, whenever the metaverse becomes more of a reality, if this is truly your digital character, your digital identity, you can actually do a lot of things with the artwork itself. And then having everything 3D, we're basically making it the best quality that we could possibly make it. You'd be able to take these 3D characters, we'd be able to put them, I'm not saying that we would have a deal with Netflix right now, but you'd be able to literally take these 3D characters, the way they're built, it could go directly into the animation series. It'd be all
That's
ready.
Awesome.
It could go into things like the Rabbit Hole, which is My Pet Hooligan's game. It's going to be ready at the highest level. These guys are. We can't make it any better than it's being made right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, from what I've seen of the My Pet Hooligan, it does look really, really neat what they're doing overall. But what I wanted to talk about was the partnership with exchanges, because I think that I don't remember or recall how you guys facilitated that or what was the purpose. But at the same time, people are like, oh my goodness, you guys are partnered with these exchanges. Everybody wants, if they come out with a token, which I don't think you guys are doing, but they're like, oh, we want to be a part of that exchange. So were you on a launch pad from an exchange, or what were these partnerships about?
No, that the partnership with exchanges, that was more so like, we were like an early launch pad partner with Binance NFT. We worked with Mint First, FTX NFT, Coinbase NFT. That was really, it's kind of I would say a pretty light sponsorship in that sense.
Okay. Yeah. Overblown it.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm curious with your take, just kind of like as someone within the space overall, like we're in kind of this, I guess we'll call it degen mint phase, but there's still a lot of collections that have lasted, survived, and accomplished a lot of different things for being out for so long. What do you think is one of the more underrated aspects that people don't realize about some of these collections that have been around for a year plus?
Yeah, I don't know. When I invest in projects now, I'm looking again at IP. Like, is it IP that you can actually see being used by a bigger audience, right? I think there's a lot of them where, I don't know, it's maybe a little bit naive to think that. I don't know. I don't want to list any NFTs because I don't really want to give any examples, but I just think there's some IP where you won't ever see it being used by a bigger audience. It's always, maybe we'll have this niche audience in Web3 and maybe it'll survive that way. But I think the projects that have the best potential are the projects that have IP that can extend and be used by a bigger audience. It could be used by brands. You could see it being used, just in a much bigger capacity. I don't know. I'm trying to think of one specifically. I mean, I could give you examples of ones that, I even think like, I have like one doodle, but the only reason I bought a doodle is because I think the IP can be used. It's very, very flexible. I don't necessarily think that they do a very good job communicating as a project, but
right.
But I think the IP is great. Like, it's very flexible in that sense. Pudgy Penguins, same sort of thing. I guess I'm kind of biased in that respect, but yeah, Pudgy Penguins, good IP. I just like things that, again, you can see it being used by a bigger audience. It has potential there. Or NFTs that I think I figured out what exactly, Doge Pound had this problem too. Like, it's like, what the heck is Doge Pound, right? It goes through all these, you launch a project, and I can tell you it took us a while to figure out like, what is the vision and identity for Doge Pound. But projects that have like a clear identity, I think, are really good as well. Like, I'm buying this project because I identify, let's just say like, Schiller's buying this because he loves basketball. This is the go-to basketball NFT, and that's very, very clear. I think that has to be very clear too. Like no more of this like just launching, making it some sort of animal or creature and just saying it's an NFT project. It's not going to work anymore, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's weird because like right now we say it's not going to work, and then like there's a random mint of whatever, and then you're like, okay, people, you know what I mean? Even though half of these are free mints, but you're talking interestingly here because I think that there is a frequent trend with people being optimistic for IP across the space overall, saying, hey, that's really what matters fundamentally, where I agree with that, but I feel like there's almost like a little bit more to it of, you know, when you go out and let's say a water bottle, right? This is maybe not a great example, but you go and there's some brands that people will recognize because it's got like the straw on it or some other thing, or it's got a brand on it because it's got a logo of whatever, let's just say like Nike, for example. But there's, you know, that one that people go to because of the actual, hey, it's got that straw or it's colder for whatever reason, and it's not just like a brand thing. When do you think that that's going to shift within the NFT space? Because if I look at the past year, specifically just NFTs, not talking about DeFi or anything, it feels that the playbook has been relatively the same. And I don't know if we've seen much technological innovation. I believe that a lot of it's being built behind the scenes, but I remember back when the FTX hearing with like Congress or whatever happened, there was a guy who was like, oh, now for like the blockchain, it's one of like 5 or 6 industries that a couple of years ago said was going to boom, and it's the only one that's not here, and it's time for them to, you know, make up or shut up or whatever the language they use. And I was like, kind of made me think like, yeah, we haven't really seen massive infrastructure changes, or if there has been, it's not really gotten the proper limelight.
And the only measure of success, it feels like in the NFT space right now, is just if you have this, if it's really expensive, right? I hope that narrative changes over time. Like the Reddit was a perfect example of like that's success. That should be success. That's a huge win for the space. Tons of people having NFTs and they maybe don't even realize it. I think that's the future. The future isn't really so much, you know, just 10,000 of us or 5,000 of us holding a super expensive, you know, JPEG. That's not the future. I mean, the future is how do we take this technology and get tons of people to have access to it. And I think to that point, I mean, we're going to see success when you have an NFT and you don't even realize that you have it. Like there can't be this technology burden and it can't be super confusing. And yeah, it's just, we're getting there though. I mean, even when you look back a year from where we were before, it's like, wow, we've really advanced quite a bit, really.
What do you think would be kind of like the end goal for this? Because when we're talking about IP, we also kind of throw in identity for that. And one aspect that I think, hey, this could work is, you know, you have your Doge Pound NFT, right? And then that's your icon for, you know, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, your Xbox, PlayStation. Like there's all these different things where I feel like you connect, but then there's the verifiability of that. Do you think that people are going to care more about that within time? Because I feel, you know, looking specifically at Twitter, the Octagon PFP was cool for a little bit. And now I'm like, I don't know if people still care about it.
I think some of this metaverse stuff and your digital identity, it still has a long ways to go. That's why I kind of want to, I almost feel like for Doge Pound as a brand, like the IP, like I said, it's easy to imagine like the path of where we have to go to keep advancing it. But for the brand itself and the business, I almost want it to be more or less like a perk. Like let's get Doge Pound to be a real business and make revenue and be sustainable. I mean, that's a big part of it right now and reach a bigger community. I don't know. I mean, a lot of the stuff is really, I wish I had the answer too, but you know,
no, for sure. So for anyone that's tuned in right now that might be seeing you for the first time, do you want to give us a quick overview of what the Doge Pound is and what you guys are wanting to achieve?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Doge Pound, again, we're really just trying to be the go-to dog project in the space. I'm hoping that in the near future that you can hold a Doge Pound NFT and you can get a lot of cool perks for your dog itself. A big part of our focus and strategy right now is trying to figure out how we can appeal to, we're calling it more of like a Web 2.5 strategy. So how Doge Pound can take its IP, take its brand and its ecosystem and appeal to a much bigger audience. So we're going after, you know, again, without going into a long conversation, we're really going after the dog niche with Doge Pound. And then the IP itself, we're trying to advance the Genesis collection and the original IP as much as we possible. So that's more of like I guess you'd say like a cool route, like a route that a lot of people are going after. Take everything, take the 2D work, make it 3D, try and get it into a series, try and get it connected with brands. But again, I think for now the biggest part of success for Doge Pound is how we can start to appeal to a much bigger audience. So hopefully,
and so with that, let's talk a little bit about the gaming engine that you guys are looking at here. So is this something where you guys are wanting to create multiple? Is this kind of, you're taking it one step at a time and going from there? What's the gaming angle here?
Yeah, I would say like some of this probably needs to be updated from our brand perspective. We don't want to focus as much, because this kind of goes back to like when we were being a launch pad. So we don't want to focus as much on making all these different sort of games. Something like the feeding game, it's something that's a little bit on the back burner now. It's kind of relevant to like maybe how we transition from getting these Web 2 consumers in and then having some sort of experience around it, like maybe like a Tamagotchi or like a feeding game. But it's definitely all just on our IP itself. We're not going to focus as much on launching things. I will say we do. So I come from the background of making mobile games, making mobile apps, running these agencies. We still do make things and try and have some sort of utility and benefit for, if we make some piece of software, anything that I want it to help Doge Pound in some sort of way. So I could say we still are operating in that sense, but yeah, I don't want to feed too far from or get too far from the IP and the original goal anymore. I think it was
so I like, if you can, was one of the decisions with doing this based off of some other people within the space going into the gaming sector? Because I remember like Cool Cats, for example, right? Everyone had the assumption that they were going to go out and they were making these paper cats that was supposed to be this mass onboarder, and then they said, hey, we're going to do a game, and obviously that didn't end up being worthwhile for them. A lot of people ended up not liking them anymore because they got into it and it just didn't do well, and I know prices should be more beyond that, but was that one of the ideas when you guys originally launched that, or was there more to it?
Yeah, that was part of the original idea. I think I'd have to admit, like sometimes I've taken a step back now. I'm very like conscious of what we're building and making sure that I think it can actually help us long term. Like when we were in our hype section, I feel like, I was just trying to do all I could to continue the hype train and, to keep it going. And I just don't want to do that anymore. I want to make sure that everything that we do just fits the IP and the vision long term. And, we're never going to be able to like fully guess the vision of Web3, right? Because it's changing so fast. But I just think we're on a much better path now with where we're going. So, but yeah, back then making games, play to earn games, it was such a hot thing. And, I know how to make games. I made a lot of mobile games in my life, but yeah, I just like the vision that we have now. I think it makes a lot more sense.
No, I love it. And I appreciate the honesty within that, because I feel a lot of people go down a route and then they're like, damn it, we put all the resources into something that we don't really want to like fully commit to. So yeah. As we're kind of wrapping up here, I'm curious, is there anything that you've seen in the space that you really think that should be different, or that you haven't liked the trajectory of it? Because I think if that question was posed to me, maybe just as kind of like a helper here, I would say that I think DAOs are cool, but there's a lot of people doing DAOs, and it seems that every single one of them hasn't really worked. And I also think that there's still collections that launch that aren't launching on newer, better technology. An example of that, the recent Game of Thrones mint. Apparently that mint was just a shit show. So I feel like there's certain things that we've learned from and that should be fixed, but we're still having issues or problems with aspects happening. So I'm curious, just in the NFT space at large here, is there anything that you're like, that should probably be different or should stop happening?
Well, I think people, I wish we could tell consumers to stop like buying all these new things. But I'm just as bad. Like I saw this, I'm sure you saw this feet pick stuff, right? That was
yep. We can look it up right quick.
I'm the same way. Like the degen in me is like, oh, this is hilarious. Like I need to buy one of these. Like this is so obnoxious. Like you can see this maybe going viral. But maybe, coming full circle, I just think that, as investors and as like people leading projects, I just think there has to be like a clear beat. If there can be a clear value proposition and a clear like identity for projects, that's something that I think is the most important thing. Like, again, like, I don't know, like a sport that I've been playing recently that I kind of love is like pickleball. Someone would come in and make an NFT and it's all about pickleball. That's literally all it is. Like, it's very clear. I think that's perfect. Like the identity is very clear from the start. Like you coming in, you're holding it because you have pickleball, you get perks and all that sort of stuff. It just makes sense. Like no more of this. I don't know. Like it's still going to happen no matter what. There's still going to be these feet picks and all these random projects, but yeah, come in with a clear identity and a vision for why someone should actually hold this. I think it makes the whole space look better as a whole.
Yeah, like it's funny though because like we survive off hype in a way, and I don't know if that's like a right way to look at it, because I think if you like, let's say that you got like a family member that's watching, it's like, okay, how do we get onboarded? And then you talk about these things, it's like hype, and it goes back to what I said earlier, that I think that as we're progressing here, I think that some of the technology is really going to bring us to a new level where it's not, hey, like I'm buying that for the value. It's like, hey, like I can actually use the certain thing, whether it's in a video game, and just the notion of everything's really, really changing. But John, listen, I want to kind of open the floor here just for a minute. Is there anything that you want to let the world know about what's going on with Doge Pound in the future here?
No, I think like truly, if you're like a dog lover, if you want to get perks for your dog in the future, I mean, everything dog based is what we're trying to go after. There's a lot of evolution in the brand that still has to happen, content strategy, how it looks as a consumer facing, but I think we're getting there. I think it really has a bright future, and if we can get into the dog niche and start to appeal to a lot of those consumers, I truly think it has a bright future. So I'm excited. I'm excited as our community. I think we finally have found a vision. I think, maybe don't quote me on this, but
yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Okay, awesome, guys. I've thrown down the chat for Doge Pound, or sorry, the chat. My goodness, the Twitter for Doge Pound down in the chat. So if you wanted to give him a follow on Twitter, be sure to do that. But John, thanks so much for taking the time today, boss.
Yeah, thanks as well, man. I'd love to come on again sometime soon. This is fun.